So we discussed all our networking configurations. We talked a lot about the Menlo cards, the Palo cards, and all there is to know about anything related to the UCS in terms of LAN and SAN networking. So we now spoke about the top part of the UCS configuration, meaning that we talked about all the networking uplinks. But now I want to talk about a lot of other things. And those other things, I mean that I want to talk about the servers, which is actually why we bought the UCS system in the first place, right? So we have our Fabric Interconnect. So we talked about all the parts that are above there. So we talked about our LAN and our SAN uplinks. But now I want to talk about my connection to the Fabric extenders and my connection to the blades. And then after that, we're going to talk a lot about how the blades are configured. When you step into the lab, when you start your UCS section, you will do that initial configuration. And as you just saw how I booted it up, I will get this system. We actually had complaints from customers that asked for, why is there no UCS chassis in your configuration? Because I paid for this and there is no UCS chassis. So we had a couple complaints about this. But this is how the UCS boots up. This is how you see the UCS when you first initialize it. You do not see the UCS chassis until you do something about it. And that is also a very important step. So the first task in your UCS section in the lab will be about how do I discover the chassis connected behind me. And that's also where a lot of mistakes can be made. So this is a very point where you need to pay attention to. What I'm doing is, by default, like we said yesterday, all the ports are in unconfigured state. Unconfigured meaning I keep the port down because I do not have a role assigned to it. So I need to assign either the server role or the uplink role. Uplink role, like this port, means that I configure this as switchport mode trunk. That's actually what the command is doing. As soon as I configure this is an uplink port, it will do switchport mode trunk. Talking about Ethernet here, not talking about fiber channel. So switchport mode trunk is the command that it will do. If I configure a port to be a server port, what will it do? So I say, all right, this port is now going to be a server port. What will it do? It will allow switchport mode FEX, or FEX fabric in total. So switchport mode effects, meaning I will expect a fabric extender to be connected to this port. So I do not allow Ethernet encapsulation. What I allow with this is I start that 802.1 BR encapsulation on this port. That's what I enable with the server port versus the uplink port. Now then I'm not done, because I want to make sure that my chassis is initialized in the way that I want it to. And what I mean with that is that there is a default chassis discovery policy that is very important for us. So if we start looking at it, it's actually this policy here on the top. So just the above checkbox, and you can lose a lot of points with this. So pay attention to that. So there are other things that I can configure here, like MAC address table agings, my power redundancy settings and stuff. But this one is very important. And this is the default setting. So it's by default set to one link and to none. And that's a very important thing to consider in the task. So what will this do? And you need to know a little bit about how the FEXs work. So how does a FEX do its port pinning? The port pinning is done by saying, all right, there is a command known on the Nexus called pinning and then max links. This pinning max links command, that is what this command does. That action one link here, that is configuring the pinning max links command. What does the pinning max links command do? If I have a parent switch, either a fabric interconnect or a Nexus, I connect a fabric extender. By default, the pinning max links is set to 1. That's my default. What does this mean? It means that even if I have 4 links, all the 4 links will be discovered. So you will see, all right, I have 4 links to my facts, all 4 links are discovered, I'm all good to go. By the way, I'm talking about individual links. I'm not talking about port channels. That changes this behavior. So I have 4 links, separate links. Now I have some servers connected to these downstream links. They send a packet. What happens? Port pinning. I will pin to the link, go out. What will happen to the next server that sends a packet? You would think I have 4 links available, so I will start load balancing. But if this pinning max links command is set to 1, it will always choose only one link and one link only to do the pinning. So this port will be pinned to the same link as well. This port will pin to the same link as well. This port will pin to the same link as well. So all the ports will start pinning to the same port. So it's very important to understand this. This is how your chassis discovery policy is configured. If it's set to 1, I will discover all the 4 links or 8 links that I connect to it. I will use only 1. A lot of people say, well, no, it's not doing that. It's doing this. I will only choose 1 link for my port pinning now. So I want to change that. There are 2 ways to change this. The first way to change that is by saying, all right, to make a more optimal use, I want to do a port channel. Because now, even if the pinning max links command is set to 1, I don't care because my port channel is 1 link, right? The port channel is a single logical link, so I can pin to that single link. So that's good. I will use load balancing per flow to do all my to forward all my stuff. So this is the best solution. Now you may or may not have access to those 2200 fabric extenders in the lab. And in our case, we have the 2100s, which is okay because the only thing we cannot do is port channeling between the parent and the effects, but that's okay. But what is very important is that chassis discovery policy. So by default, it is set to 1, so it will detect 1 link and it will use 1 link only. It may detect all the other links, but all these other links will not be in the fax command. So let's discover the chassis with only 1 link. That's what I first want to do. So I want to discover my chassis connected here. I'm configuring all these 4 ports to be server ports, but the discovery policy is set to 1. And we're going to see what's going to happen. So let me get out of the way. So I will stay to a 1 link preference discovery policy, and I will set the grouping preference to port channel. It will not port channel because we do not have hardware capable of doing that. Back to my chassis discovery. This is found in the equipment tab. If you click on the equipment here, and I go to policies, and I then go to global policies. Here I can set my link grouping preference or in my pinning max links command. So I will say, if this is set to none, by the way, I will never, even if the hardware is capable, I will never initiate a port channel. So if you get a question in your lab saying for like, okay, I want to make the most efficient use of bandwidth in my configuration, that will mean that I need to set this to port channel. So if some wording in the lab tells you I need to make the most efficient use of the bandwidth, that's going to mean port channeling. Because the port channeling is, of course, using the best way of how I can do my port channels, or how I can do traffic forwarding. So I will set it to port channel, although my hardware doesn't support it. And save the change. All right. What I need to do now is I need to convert some of the ports and now assign these to be server ports. So I will go into my Fabric Interconnect, go to my unconfigured ports, and in this case my ports 1, 3, 5 and 7 are the ones that go to my servers. So I select those, 1, 3, 5, and 7. And I tell them, all right, from now on, you are going to be server ports. And of course, I do the same on Fabric Interconnect B, 1, 3, 5, and 7. So do not forget to configure Fabric Interconnect B. And immediately, my topology changes and I discovered a UCS chassis. And you will see a lot of error messages right now because it's going to be discovering all the hardware that's in there. So I do not see any servers yet, so I cannot go dive deeper into the tree view because I did not discover it. I did discover 2 I/O modules with some uplink ports. So I have a broken port right now, as I see, on one, and I have 4 ports on I/O module 2, so I will use that one. Now, looking at the Fabric ports, I immediately can see what's going on. Port 1 is okay. It says here status is okay. The other ports will stay uninitialized. So it's still discovering stuff now, so it might take a few minutes for this to fully get operational. So I will get all kinds of error messages here. So I have 25 major errors right now, 12 minors. But this has to do its thing. So let's check how this looks on the CLI. So if I do a show interface brief, I see that my ports 1, 3, 5, and 7 are now configured. And as you can see, I configured all 4 ports, but only one of them is running in the Fabric mode, the switchboard mode fax Fabric. All the others are running in switchboard mode trunk. Why is that? Well, it's not exactly the same as a Fabric extender. It is still a Fabric Interconnect I/O module. What this means is that I will run a special control plane protocol between the Fabric Interconnect and the I/O module to discover some things that are connected behind it. So I need to pass on chassis information and I need to pass on what kind of thing I am connecting to. And that's where they use that VLAN 4044 for. It also means that I cannot use this VLAN internally. So there are some reserved VLANs in the UCS, and this is one of them. And one is running in Fabric mode. So if I do show interface fax Fabric, which is a good command to show that, I see that I have 1 active link, but I also see that I have 3 other links that are capable of connecting a fax. But they're not initialized as being fax links. If I do a show fax, I see that I have 1 Fabric extender connected, fax 001. And I see what kind of software it's running. It's getting this software from the Fabric Interconnect. And here I can see that my pinning max links is set to 1. And I'm only using interface Ethernet 1/1 to connect all of my servers. So I have 4 blades in the chassis. And I see that it's pinned to all of these 4 servers are pinned to only that single port. But I configured 4 server links, right? So here you can see that my chassis discovery policy is very important. So it is working right now. Everything seems to be pretty much discovered. So I see my 4 servers, they're still running in some errors. But what will also happen is that my I/O module is going to have a error message saying I have an unsupported connectivity. It is okay, but it is unsupported connectivity. Why? Well, I see more ports connected than I have configured. So it might take a while for all the error messages to disappear, but that's okay. And this is actually a pretty good view. If you go to your UCS chassis, and I will go out of the way, in this UCS chassis, I have a tab called Hybrid Display. So by default, it's set to the General tab where I see just the graphical overview of the chassis. If I go to Hybrid Display, I see exactly how the connectivity runs from the Fabric Interconnect towards the Fabric Extender and towards a UCS chassis. So again, back to our chassis discovery. Now everything has been discovered and is working. I showed you our hybrid display. So here we see the whole Fabric Interconnect, how it is connected to a Fabric Extender, and how that Fabric Extender then connects to the different blades. So here I can also click on this port and get properties of it. So here it sees that this port is down, that backplane port 1/4 is now down. So there are two differences here. If I open up an I/O module, first of all it says that unsupported connectivity. And that's not because it's limited in terms of functionality. It will still work, but I have more ports connected than I have configured. So therefore, I really need to have another policy configured. But it will show fabric ports and backplane ports. These fabric ports are, of course, my uplinks. So these fabric ports go up to the Fabric Interconnect. And next, I have backplane ports. So in this case, I have as much backplane ports as I have links towards my server. So in this case, I only have 4 backplane ports. Technically, I have a lot more, but they are not connected. And if I do not have ports connected, I will not show them here. So you will only see the ports that I really have available to connect servers. And in this case, that's only 4 ports. And they're still down because the servers are not powered up yet. And of course, if a server is powered down, its Ethernet link is down. So let's go back to our CLI again. If I do a show interface brief, remember this is FEX module 1. So all the interfaces will start with numbering 1/1. As you can see, there is a special interface called link 9. That 9th link, so this is a 2104 Fabric Extender. So the older generation of Fabric Extenders, which used to have only a single 10 gig to each blade, and then the other FEX had another 10 gig going to each blade. But there is a 9th interface here, and that is for management purposes. So that's an invisible link. It's only going towards the management chip inside the blade chassis. So the blade chassis has a management software running inside of it, and that's where that 9th link is going. As you can see, it already put some configurations on here. So what kind of mezzanine card is in this connected server? A Menlo card will have switchboard mode trunk on its configuration, but a Palo card will show switchboard mode VN tag. And it will also show to which interface it has pinged itself to. So here I will support VN tagging. So this is my adapter FEX configuration. No need to manually do this. It will automatically detect the mezzanine adapter in the server, and it will automatically put that right configuration on there. So if this would be a Menlo card, it would say switchboard mode trunk here. And all my others are still down. So if I do a show interface, interface Ethernet 1/1/1, I'm running in VN tag. It's a 10 gig link. It has a MAC address. I already received some packets. It's not a CDP neighbor, unfortunately. I see a special management Ethernet port. What is this management 3 port? That management 3 port is one of my L1 or L2 links. So I have a management 0 link. Here I see just my management switch, right? The top of rack management switch that we have. But my L1 and L2s also advertise via CDP. So here I can see that I can see my other Fabric Interconnect. So everything has initialized. Go back to our facts. Still only one link is used. Now, this is of course not how the lab wants you to configure everything. It will say, configure 4 links towards your servers. They might say, set the discovery policy of your chassis to 2. So make sure that chassis are discovered with 2 links, or 4 links, or 8 links, depending on where they set it to. So they will tell you set it to 2, or set it to 1, but prefer port channeling, or prefer equal cost sharing of links. So those are the first questions that you might get. Then they tell you, configure these 4 ports as being my server ports. Then what it does is, because my discovery policy has been statically set, I need to set those ports to be discovered. But after that, they told me that I had to configure 4 ports to be served. So let's say my lab told me that I had to set the discovery policy to 1 link and prefer port channeling. So that's okay. But still, then after that, the lab asks me to configure 4 server ports. That means that I'm only going to use 1. That's probably not what they want. So there are 2 ways to use all my links in the system. I can change the discovery policy to set that to the right amount of links, so 1, 2, 4, or 8. But the downside of that is, I always get a question for how to do this in my case, I would say definitely make use of all those 8 links. Because it's not for no reason that they connected 8 links and they ask you to configure 4 links in the discovery policy. Because that also comes back to, there are 2 ways to change it. So I can set the chassis discovery policy to 4 links, or 8 links, or 2 links. But what I can also do is, if I have set the discovery policy to something less than what I connected the server with, so in this case, my discovery policy is set to 1. But in fact, I am using 4 ports. What do I need to do? I need to go back to my UCS. Where's my UCS? Here. And what I need to do is, I have one special option, and that option is called Acknowledge Chassis. If you do this in production, it will kill all of your network connectivity towards this blade. So the blades will stay up and running, and your VMware software will stay running, but there's an issue with this, that you will kill all the network connectivity. Because what will happen is, it will start rediscovering the fabric extenders. So in this case, I will acknowledge the chassis, where it will warn me that all my network connectivity will be lost between the fabric interconnect and the chassis itself. I will say yes, of course I want to do this, because I really clicked this link because I wanted to. And now it will immediately go into an accessibility problem because it cannot see anything. If we go back to our CLI, if we do a show facts, it is online. And now it changed something. So if I change my discovery policy from 1 to 2, or from anything else to 4 or something, in fact, if it does not match the actual link configuration, I need to re-acknowledge the chassis. And now I will start make full use of the bandwidth that I have available. So my discovery policy is still set to 1. As you can see here, so still set to 1 link. But in fact, I am now discovering 4 links because of this, because of that re-acknowledgement. Because the system already knows how much links are connected, so now I can start using them all 4. So if I do a show facts detail right now, I see that interfaces are up. It's not discovered yet, so the port pinning is not very efficient right now. So it will repin as soon as the servers will come online. So the server pinning is still set to 1 link, so here you can see that. Here you can see that interface 1 pin to 1, interface 2 pin to 3, interface 3 pin to 5, and interface 4 pin to 7. The show fax detail command will only update, oh now it updated. So now you can see that I am using load balancing. So chassis discovery, I spend a lot of time on this because this is where a lot of people can make mistakes and you are unsure how much points can be taken away from you if you misconfigure this. Because if you have a very picky proctor who is grading you, then they might say, all right, my network connectivity is not okay, so I basically have no connectivity. I have had people saying that they scored 0 points in the UCS section, where they had boot from SAN working and they thought everything was working, still they scored 0. It might be because of something like this, that they say, all right, my network connectivity is not how it should be, so everything else is also wrong because the network is not working. So very important to keep this, to know about what's happening here. So that's my chassis discovery. I now discovered my chassis and now I see I do not have an error message anymore. It's operable right now. So it used to have an unsupported connectivity, but now it says I'm operable. This one still has that message because I have one link which is dead. We'll replace that soon. And I still have a lot of error messages because my servers are unassociated. So meaning I do not have anything, my servers are still down.